Hi, everyone. I want to share with you a little technique that I put together to understand, to find your planetary keys when looking at how to create, like the creation process. You can also flip it around and look at the destruction process that we go through. And it's based on the model of the tree of life. So I don't use, the basic Kabbalah tree of life. I haven't studied it much. I haven't gone down that route, but I know that it's based off of the Sefer Yetzirah, which was basically the book describing the emanations of God and how energy penetrated through all these different layers to come into the material world. And, many different people have put their own spin on this. The Sefer Yetzirah later became the Kabbalah in the 13th century. And, that's quite different from the Jewish mysticism. But all that to say, we do use the tree of life, right? Through many different, with many different cultures. In the Norse mythology, we have a tree of life model that we use. Neither like the Kabbalah nor the Norse mythology, the tree of life from both, they don't really associate the planets to the spheres, to the Sephiroth, but there is information that you can find, like there's mentions of it in almost all of the texts, but the information is very confusing. There's a lot of different versions. Like if you just Google it, you're going to find so many different versions of it on the internet. And getting to like what the correct one was after a little while in my studies just didn't seem possible in terms of finding the correspondences that made sense to me, like logically. So I put together my own based on logical deduction. I really wanted to use this model because it does have the different trials and tribulations that we have to go through, which are also associated with the spheres, the planetary spheres, like the different energies that are streaming in through us that we are learning to master. And so I put together a model that is based on, logical deduction, taking the best from what I've read on the different descriptions of the Sephirah, like the lessons that we have to move through, or the gates that we have to move through in order to master our own creative and destructive process, because it does, we focus on the creation, but there's also the destruction of something that's always there. So we can look at that as well using this model. I'm going to put it on the screen now so we can take a look. Okay. So I used the basic model, which looks like this. Often you'll see these pillars reversed, and a lot of people claim that when they're reversed, we're looking at the backside of the tree of life. I just logically wanted to show it, right? So if you're looking at someone, you have the right side on the right, which connects to the left brain and is the masculine. And then you have the left side on the left, which connects to the right brain and the feminine. So it will look flipped around, but this is because it's facing you. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. And then I associated the planets to the different gates and lessons and how the energy is flowing based on how the planets are actually laid out. So Neptune being the furthest is at the top, and Neptune kind of comprises everything. It has the, you know, the highest, like the spirit realms of, you know, the most divine. And it also has like the darkest realms. It's kind of like what we see pushing through right now is the 14th gate or the 14th constellation as Cities. It is connected to that energy that encompasses everything, right? It's the Asane Asylum, but it's also ascension and self-mastery, right? So there's always the polarity within each. So Neptune's at the top, and it's described as wisdom, the divine bridge. And then what you want to do to use this model is you want to place your planetary, like the constellation that's associated, like where your planet Neptune is in your Western chart. I use whole sign. Placidus is more of a psychological lens into what's happening in the mind, whereas whole sign to me describes a sort of overview of that person. So it touches a little bit on the psychology, but it's more focused on what we're seeing and what we can observe from the person. So my Neptune is in Sagittarius in the 3rd house. And so you want to place your planet, you know, your constellation in the house there. And then you run through all of these planets. So as the energy comes down, it shoots right away to the right side, which is Logos, divine intelligence. And it's actually the logical, it's the structuring. So Logos is how this physical plane is structured in the world. And it is kind of like, can be described as, if you want to look at it more in terms of mathematical, like the mathematical blueprint of this reality. So Logos is that masculine structure, like the bones that holds up everything else. And so then the energy, the emanation, like that energy that enlivens everything, moves from the structure which we need to bring forth, you know, the energy that enlivens us into this physical world. So Saturn is always kind of there first. And then it goes to Uranus, which is knowing, divine insight. And so that's that feminine energy. You know, we can associate it with like that Shakti energy, but it's that intuition. It's just the insight, you know, it's that knowing, it's that very feminine energy that brings the structure to life, that brings the Logos to life. And then it shoots down to Pluto. Now, logically, Pluto would be, you know, it's a dwarf planet that is beyond Neptune. And they often leave the center of this tree of life empty. Now, you know, they call it the abyss. It's like crossing the abyss. And once we can cross that abyss, we are then at a level of experiencing this reality where we have become the observer. Like we've transcended all these different layers within the self, different grids of consciousness, different belief systems, different gates that lead us to be able to work with the molding clay, with the premateria, which is the Logos. And it's that Uranus energy that enlivens things. And, you know, the divine bridge, like the bridge to the higher realms. So I put Pluto here because Pluto, it didn't make sense to put Pluto above Neptune. And it didn't make sense to put Neptune where Saturn is, which we often see they place it there. But with everything that I've read and all the information that I gathered, this is kind of what I've assembled as being the most logical. And so I have, I have my Jupiter, which is like this higher learning, and in Gemini in the 9th house. So I'm constantly studying like a plethora of different texts and juxtaposing them, looking at different systems, and then seeing where the strongest points of correlation are, so that I can bring forth something that is a synthesis and hopefully better in a way, like an evolution. So I brought Pluto here because Pluto represents this death and rebirth. And the heart goes through these many deaths and rebirths, right? With every beat, it stops, it dies, and then it is, it pumps again and pumps the blood again, and we're brought back to life. And so Pluto really felt like, Pluto helps us crack open the heart. And Pluto represents self-knowledge, divine cycles. So it seemed to fit here, and it made the most sense here. It's like all these triggers that we can have, all of these really harsh lessons that we have are part of these grander cycles. And they're really meant to help us work through our karmas, right? Because the planetary spheres are seen as karma in a lot of ways. It's like when I look at people, I'm looking at the soul, but then, in this incarnation, they're born with this imprint, with their astrological imprint, which creates challenges for them and creates lessons for them. So we are not our charts. We are, simply our charts are showing us that those next lessons that we're here to master. But who we are is much greater. So, Pluto is helping us find mastery by giving us the challenges necessary and the lessons necessary to crack open the gates of, not just intelligence, but of all these different gates, right? Of divine wisdom and divine insight. So Pluto's right there at the center. And that's why Pluto is such a challenging sphere to work with a master, because it is the most intense in many ways. The lessons coming in from Uranus are going to be super intense, because Uranus, the lessons come in very abruptly, very suddenly. Whereas Pluto, the lessons aren't necessarily known to come in abruptly, but they come in pretty harshly. So then as that lightning flash moves down from Pluto, it moves into the sphere of Mars. And Mars is discernment. It's divine willpower. So you want to place, again, your constellation with your house there to see how those lessons are coming in, right? When Mars is in its shadow, it's tyrannical, and it's unnecessary violence. When it's in its highest octave, it's discernment, and it's the firepower that we need to drive our goals forward. And so as it moves across, it goes to Jupiter, and Jupiter is expansion, so divine vision. And here, we have, it's basically, Jupiter is all about higher learning and our philosophical understandings. It has a lot to do with the way in which we assimilate vision. Like, how do we gain our visions? you know, if you have, like, depending on the planet that you have there, you're going to be learning those lessons of like how to expand your vision, how to gain a greater vision, for, you know, the highest calling, is going to come in, like, depending on the house and the constellation. So I'll go into that a bit further, and I'll read through like this layout. But then it moves down to the sun, and that's the soul spark, the divine expression, like your personality, but also the soul spark is the essence that we emanate, and it's based on how much we've mastered like these other planetary spheres, like that it's really going to show up right in our personality, and what those influences are, and whether we're in the shadow of them or whether we've integrated the shadow. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be like shining light once we've integrated, you know, a lot of lessons. It just means that we're going to be a full expression and living like according to really like that soul essence, rather than the conditioning, and all these other layers of belief systems. So then it moves down into Virgo, sorry, not into Virgo, into Mercury, which is communication and divine focus. So I didn't really like the description of mind here. I prefer focus, but it is connected. Mercury obviously is connected to thought and how we process thought, but even more specifically, you know, how we're processing thought allows us to have, you know, a really strong focus or a lack thereof. And that's really important to note. And then we have Venus, and Venus represents beauty, but even more so, it's divine alchemy, right? Because when we're synthesizing all of these energies and we're, you know, having conversations with people, we're having different thoughts, we're studying, we're gathering information, we're bringing them forth, you know, our ability to alchemize all of these little strands of information into something greater than how we found them is essentially Venus. So we call it beauty, but it's really about truth, and that goes very much in combination, you know, with working with the other planets and the higher octave of the other planets. And then we go down to the moon, which is kind of a controversial sphere. I'm sure many of you have heard, you know, it's seen by many people as kind of an artificial construct, but for the purpose of, you know, doing this work, we're looking at the moon not only as our emotions. I described it as emotions, divine foundation. And it's also how where our mind is, like, you know, what created the foundation, and our mood, our moon, our emotions plays such a huge role in how the energies are then pushed up or pushed down, right? When it's moving down, it's going down, it's filtering through the moon. And so we're looking at kind of our history, where we came from, you know, what's in our DNA. All of this is creating where our emotions are focused, and why our emotions are the way they are. Everything is, you know, emotions are a product, a biological product. And so it does go into the details of our DNA, of, you know, what we eat, of what material we're reading, like what we're looking at, what we're feeding our minds with. So the moon has a lot of energy. And then that gets filtered down into the earth, into Terra, which is the divine material, and it's our physicality. So essentially, this sphere here is the astral realm. So this is when we're moving the energy back up. So as the energy moves down, it goes down in a lightning shape, and as it moves back up, it goes back up and follows that same pathway. And so the energies are constantly cycling. And so as the energies move down, we have a chance to assimilate lessons from each planetary sphere. And the focus of those lessons are going to be based on what constellation and house, your particular planets are in. And then as they filter down, then we kind of assimilate and we either upgrade, or if we weren't able to gain the higher octave, we might have digressed a little bit, and then we have another chance as the energies move back up. And so the energies are constantly moving down and then moving back up. And so this is the flow. This is the positive and negative. This is how the energy moves. And this is also connected on the micro level. It's the cycles on the micro level connected to the grander cycles in the cosmos on a macro level. And so when we look at this first sphere down here, whereas there's a lot of conscious activity happening in this sphere, and so our physical body connects more primarily to our emotions, which then connects to our mind, and our emotions dictate what kind of thoughts we're having. So until we master our emotions, we can't necessarily master our thoughts or our focus. And in order to look at what you're picking up on, like emotionally, what you're connected to, like in this astral realm of like feeling and like that, the extra sensory information that we're gathering, you're looking to what sign and house. So this one here is Leo in the 11th house. So typically, we can talk about feeling a lot about the collective. The 11th house has a lot to do with the collective. It has a lot to do with the ley lines. So I haven't heard people speak about this too much, but the 11th house is often associated with technology, and it's like artificial grid. Like it's, everyone talks about Aquarius and the 11th house with technology, but there's the separation, right? There's the technology that humans are creating and making, right? And there's a whole conversation that we can go into with that of, good technology versus bad technology. And then the technologies that are used against us, the technologies that were implemented that just don't have, positive health implications on us. But then the 11th house is also the natural technologies, our natural human technologies to create with the imagination, right? Using this energy, this emotion, which is, it's like a substance, right? Emotion is connected to water, which is connected to the primordial energies, which allow us to create in these higher realms. So you can connect to the ley lines or you can connect to the artificial grid. If you have the 11th house there, this is the challenge of, truly, or even Aquarius, if you have Aquarius there, if your moon's in Aquarius, then this is kind of in the astral, this is, how this sphere, the lessons that are coming in are going to be revolving around, individuality, versus group, like the collective, what's happening in the collective will affect your emotions very strongly. Or just the technologies that are being implemented will really kind of start messing with, that astral experience. So you want to look at, what constellation you have there. And that's really going to tell you about what experience you're having, what that first layer in the astral that you're confronting and what it's influenced by. And then you can start to look at, okay, how do I find my planetary keys, like to unlock that door, by seeing, what we're confronting, then we can make a choice. And then we can also know, okay, this is why, for example, you know, when I close my eyes, like my emotions, when I tap into that, it's like I'm connected to the collective. You know, some people are just feeling so much about what's going on a collective level. And probably those are the people that have Aquarius there, or Pisces. You know, if their moon's in Pisces or the 12th house. You know, if they have Scorpio there or the 8th house, like that's really challenging placement, because they're connecting to the underbelly of the institutions, right? They're connecting to really, really strong energies that are related to, I would say, old magic. I think there's a big shift right now happening where, you know, old magic doesn't have the same grip that it had on the planet, but we're still moving out of that. And so a lot of these people probably went through those challenges. So having your moon there, looking at the sign, will give you a clue into, you know, what you're confronting on an emotional level, what you're confronting in the astral is that first layer. And it also connects to the mind. So, you know, the astral is this whole section here. And so the emotions connecting to the mind, and then you're going to see, okay, communication, divine focus, right? So often what happens is people are having like negative experiences. I spoke to someone about, you know, when if they have nightmares and stuff, this is all happening in these first 3 spheres down here, with the moon, Mercury, and Venus. And so we want to look at, you know, how are you communicating, right, with yourself? How are your thoughts? Like, how are you structuring your thoughts? How are they, you know, like, are they rooted in stuff that you still need to clear up? Like, is there still healing that needs to happen? There could be stuff stuck. Like, for example, I have, you know, this one here, Virgo in the 12th house. You know, if you have the 12th house there, I mean, the mind is going really deep, connecting with the deepest subconscious realms, right? So the astral experience for people that have 12th house anywhere in this triad is going to be a bit challenging, because they're going really deep with subconscious stuff. They're going really deep into the roots of humanity, really deep into, you know, basically like a really wide lens on everything happening, from, you know, the highest to the lowest of everything going on. So to clear up your experience in the astral realm, which is that first layer, right? As we start to become real co-creators on the earth, you want to look at what constellation you have and what house. And, you know, Virgo brings in a lot of structure, and it brings in a lot of healing. You know, so you're going to look at, okay, what are the, you know, the downfalls of each sign. And like Virgo in the 12th house could be very obsessive, right? But then it could be also like the surgeon, right? Or the medicine person, the person that's able to do like really fine tuning of things. So you want to bring in the highest octave with everything. So you're going to want to bring in the highest octave of each. And then we have, this was a really important sphere. The reason why art is considered probably the most powerful thing on the planet, like just the process of being able to create, is because we are alchemizing energies. When artists bring their work forward, the impacts are so powerful, right? They resonate throughout so many layers of our experience, because they can bring in feeling, they can bring in, you know, similar to watching a movie. If it's well done and it's very artful, right, we're really able to kind of transmute a lot of the negative things happening, you know, a lot of kind of like cut off some of the negative roots of humanity, and bring forward, you know, something that, like a piece of art that can illuminate, right? Can bring awareness and can show us different things, can make us feel something so powerfully that it shifts our consciousness. And so we're using the sphere of Venus to do that in our daily lives. And so it's really how we can alchemize and how we can synthesize information. And by focusing on that aspect and learning to master that aspect of, really alchemizing for, to increase awareness and to bring forth, this transmission of like awareness. It's because it's not just about beauty. That's where I think, Venus has a reputation, like especially in Western astrology, it's associated to like a lot of the superficial things related to beauty. But I really feel like love and truth are synonymous. They go hand in hand, and so it's not always beautiful in a typical or traditional way, but it's beauty in the sense that it just boom, it brings awareness, right? So we're doing that within ourselves. And when we can, master this lower sphere, we're mastering our experience in the astral. We're mastering our experience of dream time, right? We can increase our awareness so we can actually start doing the healing that dream time actually allows us to do, waking up in dreams and making changes, like, moving things around and moving the chess pieces around, as I'd like to say, in our own minds. If anyone's had like reoccurring nightmares, and then eventually, like I experienced, one day I woke up in the dream and I was able to confront that thing that was, that really scary thing that was just like, awful in my dreams. It took a few years for me to like really master, like I wanted to wake up. I didn't want to be stuck in those dreams. Now I've mastered that. So if I have things confront me in my dream time, whether it's stuff in my subconscious mind, right? Like the hidden goblins in my own subconscious mind, or the stuff from the collective that's coming in from the collective unconscious, I can wake up in my dream and, either wake myself up out of the dream or just wake up into that awareness so that I can really look around and see, what is this? What is it connected to? What is it trying to tell me? So that's the advice that I have, for working in this lower sphere here, and, really looking at each one and then finding the keys. It's not always easy, right? But you want to look at like with the positive and the negative of each. And then that's going to create how you express yourself in the world. Once you clear up like this kind of astral realm and you come into the causal realm, your expression is going to be clear, and it's not going to be overshadowed by things that you're focusing on that you don't want to be focusing on, right? Or just imprints left from like, the news or whatever, propaganda, and, different things that you're watching that might not even be, that are just kind of like fogging up your mind and causing this like internal chaos for nothing. Once all of this is cleared up, then your expression is really aligned with the highest octave of your blueprint, right? So you're like mastering, it's like aligned with the highest octave of, for example, Virgo in the 12th house, Leo in the 11th house, Cancer in the 10th house, and the sun is shining with Leo in the 11th house here. So it's going to align to the highest forms of, individuality, the highest, forms and hopes and dreams for humanity, the highest octave of, technology. And there'll be some really strong discernment that can be shared on, positive or negative technology, and, the natural technology, with the body versus like artificially made technology. But, if it's in, for example, Gemini in the third house, then that's going to shine totally, in a different way. It's going to be like this, pure communication, um, regarding, mental processes, regarding, connecting with the community, really strong communication with your community, um, you know, really strong ability to share what you're learning with others, in your close environment with your family, friends. And so you want to look, and then find that highest octave of the constellation in the house. And then, moving up into higher wisdom, the lessons get a bit more challenging, right? And we're having to connect with, like, we're having to expand our soul spark, just like encompasses more, right? And it's encompassing like a greater vision. And then you want to look to see how you're doing that. If you're doing it through Gemini in the ninth house, you're doing it through studying, and you're doing it through studying a lot of different things. But if it's through Libra, in the second house, you're doing it by coming into balance with your values, right? With your finances, with the physical sensations in your body. So then, it moves back, and then gets into the even more like greater challenge, with Mars. Mars is such a challenging sphere to work with, but is so important because it really helps us refine, like what we're bringing forth on the material plane. It's kind of like it is the lower octave, like not the lower octave, it's the next layer down from Saturn. And Mars is discernment, right? And we're able to weed through like where we are implementing our will force. And again, depending on what constellation and what house you have here, like the challenges are going to be greater and greater, right? If it's in, for example, Libra or the seventh house, like the challenges are going to be really, that will force is going to be tested with other people. It's, you're going to gain greater will force through your relationships with other people, and through, that communication, and really coming into balance with communication, so that's very challenging. And so they all have their challenges, like, this one here, Gemini in the ninth house. So like finding the willpower is really coming in through this, again, this like higher learning, having a really discerning philosophical understanding of things. It's more like a refinement of ideas, that this Mars energy comes through. And so willpower comes through a certain amount of understanding and, higher learning. So you're gaining your strengths, or you're going into the weaknesses, depending on how you can master those lessons. Pluto here, Libra in the first house, this is really important to see, how is Pluto cracking your heart open, right? Is it doing it through like Pisces, right? In the fourth house? You want to look at how is Pluto generating those lessons for you to learn about yourself, right? For you to understand the cycles, these mini cycles within and the grander cycles without. How is Pluto like expressing itself? If it's expressing itself in the first house, I mean, there's a lot of challenges on a physical level. Like the physical body is literally having to go through this death and rebirth process, with the lessons. If it's in the second house, like it might affect finances, right? Someone could be experiencing these harsher lessons through, through finances and changes with their work, or with their resources, and you know, if it's in the fourth house, I mean, it's digging right into the foundation. So when I read people's charts, I use this map to kind of see where the lessons are coming in for them. Um, and so I'm sharing it because I found it very, very insightful and very helpful. Just kind of like understand the self and then be like, okay, you know, this is the higher octave, this is the lower octave of this lesson. And these are all like, how should I say, the way that the energy emanates down, right? It's the same for everyone. It's universal. It's kind of like these are the lessons that are, you know, are global. Um, we're constantly, you know, we've been updating like the house system, for example, and like trying to figure out. Well, I've been working on that, and I know a few other people that are like, you know, it has changed over different centuries, throughout different centuries, because you know what was you know, what the first house, or maybe not the first house, but the sixth house represented, you know, in 400 BC isn't going to be what it represents now. So, you know, certain things morph and change, but the planetary spheres have stuck with the same descriptions, like the same qualities of energy, because, you know, it's universal and it's also, it can be felt very clearly. Like as we have these transits, you can really distinguish the difference between Mars and Venus, for example, or Pluto and Uranus and Saturn. Right. So, so yeah, going back up, like here, having Uranus in Scorpio in the second house, like this divine knowing, the divine insight, and that like the knowing comes in through Scorpio in the second house. So it's coming in through the second house of sensations. So like abrupt changes to physical sensations, abrupt changes to like the person's values. Like they might get insights and it's just like, oh my gosh, like your whole value system changes because of information that you were given. Really strong knowing or you know, insight into other people's value systems, into what they're feeling, like what the sensations are in their body. And then Scorpio here, you know, divine insight is coming in through this very scorpionic energy, which connects again to water, to emotion. And it, you know, it could be related to death, and birth, and you know, the more platonic qualities of Scorpio, but you know, also the underbelly of the institutions, the underbelly of things going on, like the flash of lightning, that divine knowing, you know, as I described in another video, could be just like knowing, you know, whether or not someone's pregnant, for example. That would be like a kind of, you know, Scorpio in Uranus, because it's the underbelly. So yeah, then, you know, Saturn here is in Leo in the 11th house. So Saturn's coming in and structuring the way that it's structuring the whole mathematical sequencing of the physical world, is again through this like individuality, humanitarian focus, you know, mixed in with the human technology, the ley lines, connecting on that level. You know, so it's your experience of reality, like studying this one in particular, I find is these top three are so important. They're the upper triad. And there's so much information, and just, you know, with Pluto included, but Pluto's more it gives us the lessons to kind of come into this sphere up here. Like yeah, Saturn just, it's just, there's so many aha moments that you can come to when you just understand how your material world is being structured, right? How your life is being structured. And so So yeah, I wanted to share this video with everybody so that they can use it for themselves. I highly recommend, reading it. I was recently dealing with a client who has nothing in their 9th house, and so for them, studying, comparing like different systems really doesn't fall in their chart. Like they're not here mastering that, their chart was more mastering like just the knowing, that divine insight, the epiphanies that come in, and really fine tuning that. But for me, I have a lot of 9th house energy, and communicating that with the Gemini. So this is like part and parcel of what I do and how I come to my willpower, how I come to my expansion. And yeah, so, I encourage everybody to use this model if they're feeling called to just kind of see where they're gaining their strength. So you can reach me if you want to do a session with me. I would love to look at all the systems, with the Mayan, the gene keys, the human design, the Western chart, and the system that I created here to really just kind of see what comes out. I find it's been very, very powerful juxtaposing all of them versus just looking at one. And that's that Gemini energy where it just wants to bring in a lot of different things. I think that you can gain as much information by juxtaposing them and looking at where things are really, really highlighted, like the most important things. But everything has its value, and going super, super deep and dedicating, to just one system has its value as well. So, but if you're here wanting to also create, knowing what's there already, and then looking to see where you can bring in something to fill in that gap, right? That empty gap, that space where something could be more helpful, something, could be created or provided to help people gain even more insight. So my website is inspiringplayfulevolutions.com, and I have a button that you can click for systems of gnosis to set up a session. And that's it. I hope that this is helpful, and I look forward to bringing something forward soon. Hopefully, there's just a lot of things going on with this last degree of Pluto and Capricorn. It is really intense, but it's really good. So yeah, take care. I'll talk to you soon.